It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. I read a story once about leadership, and it was an interesting story. I'm going to try to convey it the best that I can. But the gist of the story, or the gist of the whole episode, is how to know if you're a great leader. And it starts with this story. I have a neighbor whose daughter is the same age as my son. Their birthdays are 2 days apart, and they play outside with each other often. And not too long after her fifth birthday, her mother passed away after a multi-year battle with cancer. That night, me and my three kids were goofing around at home giggling, but across the street there was a family mourning. And then it hit me. There are two realities happening at the same time. The one with me and my family, and the one with my neighbor's daughter who just became a single parent family. People who have trouble accepting and respecting this fact turn out to be poor leaders. The fact is that many realities exist at the same time. These are people who tend to speak more than they listen, but the greatest leaders know how to do this one thing. They're able to feel the discomfort of holding opposing realities at the same time in their mind, without reaction, without fear. This discomfort is cognitive dissonance. So, why should we embrace cognitive dissonance, and why is it some kind of secret weapon? The feeling of cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable. It tends to trigger the brain to get into a reactive state where it can't think. That's when you experience a lot of overwhelm, frustration, and anxiety because of it. And research shows that emotional pain can be as painful as physical pain. This is why the brain reacts to these feelings as if it were life-threatening, as if there was a criminal in front of you with a gun pointed to your face. And moreover, when our brains are afraid, it needs to enter into a black and white type of mentality. Fear is most useful only for life-threatening situations, and when you're in one, you need black and white answers, because if you don't have that clarity, you just might die. Let's pause for a second. Two things that came to my mind right away in reading this article. The first is about the concept of fight or flight. If our brains are afraid, it makes everything black and white. Many people, when they refer to black and white, are referring to a fight or flight mentality. It's we need to make clear decisions, and we need to make those quickly in order for us to be out of survival mode and into thriving mode. So it's one of these things where we need to make adjustments and pivot so that we know exactly where we need to be and what we need to be doing. The other is about people who speak too much or speak way more than they should instead of stopping and listening. The two things that came to my mind there, one is the difference between listening with the intent to understand and listening with the intent to respond. A good leader always, or near always, listens with intent to understand. If your sole purpose of listening and hearing someone out is so that you can respond to their query, it's not going to put you in a position where you'll be recognized as a good leader. In fact, if you just listen with the intent to reply, many people are just going to not come to you anymore because you're cutting them off, you're not giving them a chance to speak, and you're speaking way more than you should. It was a story about Nelson Mandela that really caught my eye. Nelson Mandela was at a tribal council with his grandson, and many people there had differing views or opposing opinions, and the meeting was supposed to only last for 20 or 30 minutes. And he was there with his grandson, and Nelson Mandela let everyone speak and let everyone air out their concerns or their ideas. And his grandson turned to him and said, "I thought you were supposed to be the leader. Can't you just stop this and tell them what they need to do?" And Nelson Mandela smiled, and he said, "The best leaders are the ones who listen to all the different ideas, because what if one of their ideas was better than one of mine? It's better for me to listen and hear everyone out and then give my opinion last. Good leaders always finish the conversation, not start it." And I thought that was so cool, because if you put all this together, you can see that there's this ability to see the world through a different lens, and that's this cognitive dissonance that he's talking about. So let's continue. If you examine a lot of suffering in the world, it's because of two opposing parties thinking in black and white. When doing this, we're in a state of fear towards each other. And when we are afraid, the brain is incapable of empathy. So instead, we fight with each other, ding, ding, which means someone's going to get hurt. Or we into flight mode and avoid each other to create our own bubble without finding a resolution. I should have just kept reading. When we run into challenges that need addressing, we often react without thinking. We make decisions that we regret. You then see the mistake that got made because important information got overlooked. Why does this happen? Because your brain tends to develop tunnel vision when it's stressed. It's true. If a hungry tiger walks into your room, you will look anywhere else except where the tiger is. No, that's not true. I'd look straight at the tiger. When we're afraid, our brains develop tunnel vision to only focus on the threat. That makes sense. Stress tends to have that exact same reaction or effect on our brain. And this is why we end up focusing only on the problem, which doesn't mean the brain is focusing on finding the solution. Tunnel vision blinds the brain from seeing what we need to do, the ideas, the opportunities, the solutions. To operate at your very best, you need to develop the muscle to get yourself out of tunnel vision, especially when it matters the most. There's one key way to be able to help develop that muscle, and that is to increase your tolerance to discomfort rather than reacting to it. There's a quote from Bruce Lee I'm trying to remember. I think it says, "Do not pray for an easy life, pray for strength to endure the difficult one." Right? It's just one of those things where that's where we are. If you relate to that, I think this is Bruce Lee again. I'm trying to remember who said this, but I'm going to quote. We'll just say someone of great value said, "I once went on a silent meditation retreat where I meditated for over 100 hours over 10 days. One of my eye-opening moments was to experience how capable we are of overcoming discomfort. Sitting cross-legged on the floor for 10 plus hours a day caused a lot of aches in my body, but over time, I felt great. I had moments where I was able to be still, both my mind and my body, for over an hour without moving a muscle. But here's the plot twist. The discomfort was always there. The aches and pains never left. It's hard to describe, but I find myself not bothered by it anymore. Not by ignoring it, but by simply being okay with it. Then bringing my attention to where I wanted to bring it. The best way to describe it is as if my discomfort was the driver of my proverbial car. I then took the discomfort out of the driver's seat and put it into the passenger seat, and I took the wheel. It's there with me, but I started to dictate where I wanted to bring the car and stay focused on that, even though the discomfort was already there. Great leaders are able to sit with many opposing ideas in their brains without reacting to them. No fear, no concern, no resistance, only humility and curiosity. I love that. You need to be a curious explorer and you need to be humble about what you're doing. This is why they often seem so calm, despite how volatile a situation may get. This is not about trying to bring other people into what you feel reality is because yours is the right reality, but it's to first accept the fact that in current moment, there are many different realities being lived at the same time. If you don't react and stay in curiosity, then you learn to ask more important questions. When you do this, you'll find the important context needed to resolve your issue. So next time you become aware of your own cognitive dissonance, pause for a second, be with it. Don't fight to get rid of it. Don't avoid it in flight by distracting. Don't freeze by numbing yourself from it. Be with it. Even if it's just for a few short moments. Your brain will begin to open out of its tunnel vision and you'll see all the ideas, solutions, and opportunities that are always there, or they're all along. And that's when your big aha moment finally occurs and you have what's called mental clarity. Then you can make better decisions, create deeper trust, and produce the best results. One of the keys that I've seen about this is, when you're trying to understand neuroscience, when you're trying to understand how people tick, one of the most famous quotes that I always use is, "Help me understand." If someone comes to me with an opposing view, instead of me being contradictory, I always say, "That sounds really interesting. Help me understand why you feel this way, or help me understand what got you to this conclusion, or help me understand what brought you to this place." And I think that using "help me understand" shows that you're empathetic to what someone else has to say. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to support their cause or believe the same way as they do, but it shows that you're willing to give them a seat at the table and you're willing to hear their thoughts. And I feel like if we approach life this way and if we approach work this way, that's definitely going to make us 100 times greater leader. All right, that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to cover, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.